Hey fellas, this is my business. You ruin my dream, and I'll shoot you in the ass. You got 48 hours. That's it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special edition of Outtakes. I'm happy to say that tonight's show is dedicated all to filmmaking, and joining us via all kind of technical connections here that we hope stay with us is Christian Filippella.
Hey Phil, good evening, and thank you so much for having me. I heard great things about your show, so I'm really happy to be here with you tonight.
Christian, come sta?
Sto bene.
There you go. How are things in Italy?
It's great. The weather is great. The spring is coming, and we're enjoying the weather, and I'm having a good time.
Christian, you started out as a lawyer. How in the
Yes.
world did you shift from being a lawyer and decide to go into filmmaking?
Well, I think education is a very important thing, regardless of what you want to do in life. And when I was 17, I wanted to get a degree, and I think unless you live in New York, Los Angeles, or in another big city, it's an age where you still don't know exactly what you're gonna do. If you're an artist, you don't have like all the tools and the people to connect with to do something more artistic. And plus, we're talking about early 90s, so it's not like now that the digital revolution made much easier for everybody to access cameras and the editing machines to make movies. So I was always in love with movies, but I didn't have access to it. I didn't know how to make a film. And so I decided to study law because I think law is a great base to have the fundamentals to do everything in life. And actually it did help me a lot later on when I started producing. So I don't regret it. Plus, it allowed me to go study in Spain, and that's where everything started for me as a filmmaker, because that's where I met a girl I fell in love with, Claire Falconer, who was also a photographer like me, and we got together, we started writing, and we decided to make movies, which is what I did in Ireland. I started making short films, and that's when I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. But I did graduate, and I did study as a lawyer, but I never actually practiced.
I see. Now Claire Falconer, since you brought her up, she was in your very first film, and she also has a part in Silver Case. So this relationship you have is going to continue professionally, I would assume?
I think so. I mean, we have always worked together, and she's like a great support for me. And every film I made, she did something. She, like me, she can cover every position on a film crew, and she's also a wonderful actress. So I don't see why not, as long as we both have the availability and the time to work together. Because of course, she has her own projects, and she's also an amazing painter. So sometimes she's busy with that in Ireland. But if there is the opportunity to work together, we will continue to do that, because it's a great mind collaboration.
Now that first movie that you made with Claire was made in Belfast. So your interest may have started in Spain, but how did you get from Spain to Belfast to start making your films?
Well, she's Irish, and we were both studying law in Spain. And when we graduated, I decided to move to her town, and I wanted to make a short film in English, because I wanted to have like a wider audience. And Belfast is an amazing city, especially at that time. I don't even remember the year, but we're talking about the end of the Troubles in Ireland. There were still all these like great contradictions in Belfast. There was Shankill Road, Falls Road, and so that was very inspiring to me as a filmmaker. In fact, the film is about these endless political troubles that are in Ireland. And that allowed me to show that I had some skills for directing. And I sent that short film to the most prestigious film school in Europe, which is in Italy, and it was founded in the late 30s. It's one of the oldest in the world, and they only select 6 filmmakers. So I told myself, okay, I'll try to make this short film on my own, with pretty much with no money, and then I'll send it to this film school. And if they select me, that means I do have the talent to do this. Otherwise, I'll do something else. Actually, they did select me, and the teacher over there at that time was Gianni Amelio, who is an amazing Italian filmmaker, who I think has won Cannes Film Festival as well, like many other prizes, and I was in Venice several times with his movies, and I really enjoyed the movie, and so everything started there, and I had the opportunity to study in this amazing school where I learned a lot about filmmaking.
Let's talk a little bit about your school, Christian, while we're talking. Forgive me about this, my Italian is a little rusty, but the school you're talking about, I believe, was the Centro Sperimentale di Cinematografia. Did I get that close?
That's a good pronunciation.
Okay.
The C in Italian is a C. Sounds like C. So cinematografia.
There you go. Okay. And then, but from there, you actually won a Fulbright scholarship and managed to go to AFI. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between those two schools. You receive a degree from the film school in Italy. Now you go and get your advanced master's degree from the American Film Institute. Compare and contrast, if you would, those two different styles and approaches to film.
The main difference between the American Film Institute and the Centro Sperimentale di Cinematografia, which I think are two of the best film schools in the world, is in the way the director, I'm talking about, my own class, the directing class. The director is more a filmmaker in Italy. It's more an author. You have like the possibility to work hands-on in every single department. So, from, editing your own film in a Moviola, because, we keep shooting 35 millimeter, to editing your film in Final Cut or Avid, or work on the sound, prepping the movie with the costume designer and the production designer in a more personal way. You have a direct contact with each department, and you do actually take care of every single aspect of filmmaking. At AFI, it's like more like working with the studios, and so you're just the director. And of course, you have to collaborate with every other person in every other department, but you would never be allowed to operate the camera or to have like a more intrusive way of deciding things about lights, about colors, or production design, or costumes. I think in Italy you are freer, and so you have like more the chance to put your own mind into your work. And there it's more a collaboration process. And I think they're both great ways of making movies. It's just a different approach, a completely different approach.
Would you tend to favor the Italian way and possibly make more of your films in Europe because of that?
No, I can work both ways. I enjoy at the same time working as the director on set, and then make my own films and be more independent, like I did with Silver Case. But I've worked like on TV for many years as director and assistant director, and I was only doing that, and that's totally fine with me. Of course, in the future, I hope I'll be independent enough to have more control of my films. But I would be completely fine to work like in a studio system production, where your word it's not as powerful as it can be when you're like the author of your film. You know?
Mm-hmm. Since you brought up Silver Case, let's start talking about that. It's going to be released very soon here in the Pittsburgh market. And for this movie, you did literally everything. You wrote the script, you directed it, you produced it, you shot it, and you edited it as well. So out of all those things that you did, which do you prefer?
I really enjoy shooting, filming, because my background is photography and writing, and so I have a very strong visual approach to filmmaking. So I feel kind of frustrated when I can't operate or do the cinematography myself. I need to find a cinematographer that I have a really strong connection with, and then I have to collaborate very closely with him. When that doesn't happen, I feel like it's not really my film. And so that aspect of filmmaking, I would like to keep doing it. Everything else was more dictated by the limited resources that we had. So, I have different ways to structure my work behind the film depending on the budget. In general, as I said, I like to feel free, but I shoot with a small guerrilla-style crew. But I can also work with a much larger crew. For Silver Case, I had what I like to call more like a purist approach, where I was like the guy who was like really doing pretty much everything, and so it's really my film because I wrote it, I produced it, I shot it, I edited it. So you can't blame anybody else if something wrong about the film.
Well,
but I was really forced to do that because the budget was very, very small.
Senator and Master used to be old friends, business partners. They made a fortune in shady deals. Hollywood became a way to launder their dirty money. Now, Senator is ready to remove Master from the game. Your mission is part of his plan to take over. Without the actor, Master loses all his investors. Charm Doug Deming and ensure he declines all offers coming from the Master.
Counselor, the pig is in the poke.
Well, when you watch this film, I'm not surprised that you said you enjoy shooting it because I think that's one of the things that stands out in this film. Some of the shots and the shot sequencing are really worthwhile. There seems to be a couple of shot scenes in here that I don't know if you borrowed them or were paying homage, but they seem to be the exact type of setup that Tarantino used in Pulp Fiction, specifically the trunk scene. Were you doing that purposely to kind of throw that stuff back, or what? What was going on there?
No, I think when you decide to make a film, you need to develop an aesthetic because movies are visual. And so you need to look for a shooting style, and we were inspired by the Italian movies from the 60s and the 70s, and of course Tarantino also loves those films, and
Yes.
If you're American, I totally understand that you might not know some very small minor filmmakers from Italy from the 60s because the movies were never released, and unless you're here and you study filmmaking in Italy, you never watch them. But I did that, and I loved them, and we both look at the same filmmakers. We were inspired by the same filmmakers, so it's obvious that Tarantino is an amazing worldwide known filmmaker, and people watch Silver Case, and they think I was inspired by him, but that's really not the case. I mean, my movies are always very different. You know, my next film might be a drama. Tarantino only makes those films. I don't want to be that type of filmmaker. But you know, I don't mind if like people see Tarantino in Silver Case. That's totally fine. He's a fantastic filmmaker because you know he takes a lot from other films and then makes them better. You know, his last two movies are remakes of Italian films. You know, so I totally get where you're coming from, and you know that you see that in my movie.
Where was we?
I was explaining how it doesn't make sense to buy an unopened briefcase when I don't know what's inside.
I thought this was the right place. My friend texted me, told me you wanted to buy this case. That hadn't been opened.
Oh, that case.
I thought this was the right place.
Yeah, we're in the right place. How much you want for it?
35,000. You have your rates and I have mine.
I guess you do. I'll tell you something. I'll think about it.
Let's mention one of those producers or directors and filmmakers in Italy that you talked about, and that would be Sergio Corbucci. And you won the award, the Sergio Corbucci Award. Probably most American audiences would know him because he did create the original Django movie with Franco Neri. And when you won that award, do you feel compelled, let's say, to put some of his elements into your movies to kind of honor back winning that award?
When I won the Sergio Corbucci Award, for me it was like, you know, a great accomplishment because I see him as a fantastic filmmaker, and they gave me the opportunity to come to the States and study at AFI because it was like a prize that helped me cover the fees to do my master at AFI, and so there's only one Sergio Corbucci Award every year, so that was like amazing. And then I do look at these movies like a piece of film history. But as I said before, I like to be inspired by many different filmmakers, from Antonioni to Fellini to Hitchcock to Kubrick. So that doesn't mean that, you know, if I'm shooting a thriller, I'm going to make it look like Shining, you know? So,
Sure.
I love films in general, from like the 30s to these days. And I always look at every filmmaker who makes good movies with appreciation. But I try to have my own style.
Now, Silver Case is your first full-length film. You had short films up before that.
As a director, yes.
Correct. So how was it making the transition from going from the short film to a full feature-length picture?
You spend the same time to make a short film and the feature film. Yeah, it might sound hard to believe, but I put the same amount of energy, time, work in a 20 minutes, 30 minutes short film and the feature film. I think the main difference is like the resources that you have to have available, you know, because of course, you know, you need to shoot more days, you have more post-production, you have more actors, more locations. So it's a lot more work in pre-production and production. And if you need to be really good in using your financial resources and spend the money in the right department and at the right time, because you might end up finishing your money before your film is finished. And this happens a lot of times with independent filmmaking. You know, I hear a lot of people like they manage to shoot for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or maybe they don't have money for post-production, and then they can't finish their film, or they end up having a film that is not complete. And so the main difficulty in this case was that I was also producing it, and so I had to be very careful about using my resources, my financial availability the right way.
Now, where did the idea for Silver Case come from? Because you wrote the script, and all good movies start with a good script. What inspired you to put this down on paper?
Probably like these is a short film that I shot in my first film school called Silver Nail, and even there is the MacGuffin of the case, and it was a great short film that was selected at the European Film Festival in Helsinki, I think in 2002. It was shot with no money, it was pretty much an exercise in my first film school, and they wanted us to shoot a film with no money. And so you had to find a really good idea to make a really strong film that would compensate the lack of budget. And then so I had this idea, and it worked out really well. Everybody liked it, and then it ended there. I never really made it the transition. I never made it into a feature film. But then years later, I was in Los Angeles, and I was trying to produce this film called White Widow. And at one point, I had a lot of great actors attached to the film. From Tommy Flanagan to Mark Boone Jr., Michael Madsen, Melissa George and Benicio del Toro were rumored. But then, we couldn't put together all the money that we needed. And so I was very frustrated. I didn't want to wait anymore. I just wanted to start shooting and prove to myself that I could make a feature film, even with very limited resources. And so I started thinking, what do I have available right now that I could film with little money? And White Widow was also a crime caper, and so I had this idea of how to transform that short film into a feature film. And I was like, okay, I'll try to write it. I wrote it in 3 days, and you need a beginning, a middle, and an ending, climax, resolution, all that. And once you have all those elements, translate them into a screenplay. And I did that, and then the next step is people must like your work, because otherwise it's just you making the film. So I sent it to some producers' friends and actors that I knew, that I appreciated and I worked with in other previous works, and they all loved it. They all said, this is really fun. I was reading it and I kept laughing, and I was like, hey, I think this can be done. So I convinced Claire, who she produced it with me, and then we started pre-production pretty much right after I had the very first draft. It was a very, very quick process, and 4 weeks later we were shooting. It was hard to believe.
Wow, yeah, that's fast.
Very intense, but I felt very free, because I was like, hey.
Yeah.
You can actually make a movie this way. I remember reading Ridley Scott book many years before, and there was a statement of Mr. Scott in the back, and it said, if you want to make a film, just take a camera, call your friends, and shoot. And that's pretty much what we did.
Listen, I want to tell you about the.
Yeah, I heard. We got a couple of guys on.
Well, I can guarantee the content has not been compromised.
Well, I'll take that into consideration. What can I say? Very curious.
I know you are.
Ah.
All right. I'll keep you informed.
In the meantime, I helped producing another film called The Place Called Hollywood. It's directed by Gregory Martin. And so I keep making films, and I don't know if you know that, but in Italy I also run a soccer team, which is a completely different thing. And so that keeps me busy as well. So I'm not only focused on filmmaking right now.
Now, is this a pro soccer team or a local soccer team?
Yeah, it's a professional soccer team. I'm a qualified general manager for every professional soccer team in the world. So
very good.
I was asked to run this team, and it was at the time where work was a bit slow. My film was just finished, and it wasn't going to be released for a few months, and I was still thinking about my next project. And so I said, okay, yeah, why not? I love soccer, I love sports in general. So.
Christian, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know it's very late at night over in Italy now, so thank you very much for taking the time to stop and talk with us. The name of the movie is Silver Case. Christian is the jack of all trades with this. He wrote it, cinematography, editing, director, producer. It stars Eric Roberts and Seymour Cassel, certainly two big names to it. We wish you an awful lot of luck with the movie. It'll open up here in the Pittsburgh market at the end of the month. You'll be able to see it on VOD and on home video as well.
I mean, it's ridiculous when, in order to get something, you got to get something else. And that thing you want or need is tied to the first thing you wanted to get in the first place. Ain't no way you can get the first thing without having to get the second thing. And that's because it's simply impossible to get that thing without having gotten the first thing first. You know what I'm saying? Like peanut butter. What? Like peanut butter. Like peanut butter. Yeah, like peanut butter.
Do you prefer shooting in film, or do you like the new digital stuff?
I think, you know, I love the sound of rolling camera. So I will always prefer film, but you need to be realistic. And if you don't have a lot of money, it makes no sense. With what digital revolution has done out there, and the amazing cameras that are available, and the fact that they're so small and easy to use, I would say, you know, to every young filmmaker out there to start shooting digital. Then if you're lucky, you end up directing a $5 million, $10 million budget film. Then you can be more of a purist and say, hey, I want to shoot film, because when it's projected, unless you have, you do a lot of post-production, you do a DI transfer into film, you can see that the movie was shot in digital, and there's always that feeling, like, of not being completely true and believable, like a film projection. So I'm a 35mm guy. If I could shoot 70mm, I would shoot 70mm like Ben-Hur. The reality is that there is very little money out there, and we have to spend as little as we can to produce good movies, but with a very little budget, because the market of independent filmmaking out there is saturated, and it's very hard to find distribution for your film. So you don't want to spend $2-3 million to shoot a film that you can shoot with like $500,000.
Sure. You've done, and we talked about Silver Case, and we talked about all of the roles you played behind the camera. There are rumors floating around that you might actually try your hand in front of the camera and do some acting. Is that a true rumor? Are you actually considering that, or was that just talk in the wind?
No. I have done acting, and I played the lead in some Italian films, and I find that really fun to do. But I'm doing that just for friends, filmmakers, friends who ask me to act, because I would never have the time to go through the process of like auditioning and learning all the lines. Like I'm very sympathetic for my fellow friends actors, because they have to work really hard to find a way, a path into their acting career. It's really difficult. So I'm happy to do what I do in my life, and I enjoy acting, but I don't think I will ever start the acting career.
Gotcha. Christian, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know it's very late at night over in Italy now, so thank you very much for taking the time to stop and talk with us. The name of the movie is Silver Case. That's going to wrap us up for this edition of Outtakes. I want to say a special thanks to Christian Filippello for joining us from Italy and his movie Silver Case with Eric Roberts and Seymour Cassel, which you can see VOD or home video. That's going to wrap us up for this edition of Outtakes. Until next time, I'm Fiore, and I'll see you in the theaters. I'll be the guy in the last row.